From the moment we set foot on the planet, every instinct warned us to leave. The star around which it orbited cast only the faintest glimmer of light, barely illuminating the dense fog swirling across barren plains. Ancient, craggy spires rose like black needles, piercing a bruise-colored sky. Our expedition's shuttle sank into the ashen soil upon landing. A soft hiss of decompression marking our unwelcome arrival. The air outside was so thin and cold that our breath misted almost instantly. Yet eager for discovery, we donned our suits, flicked on our helmet lights, and ventured forth into the eternal twilight. We were 5 in number. Captain Rhea, a veteran of numerous off-world explorations. Jakin, the fidgety geologist obsessed with xenolithology. Marina, our moody xenobiologist who was rumored to have a hidden reason for coming here. Sahan, our stoic engineer and faithful caretaker of all equipment. And I, Awoke, the record keeper documenting every footstep. We had come with a singular purpose, to investigate the rumors of an ancient temple that predated any known civilization. It was rumored to be at the planet's central highland, in an area perpetually ensnared by black clouds clinging to needle-sharp ridges. Jason, scanning the horizon with his trembling hands, was the first to point out something unusual. His voice hissed over the comms. "You see that?" We followed his gaze. Several hundred meters ahead, the ground rose, shaping a series of obsidian pillars. Even from a distance, each pillar glistened with peculiar inscriptions that reflected the minimal starlight with an uncanny luster. The closer we got, the clearer the markings became. Twisted forms, humanoid silhouettes kneeling beneath towering beasts, arcs reminiscent of cosmic storms. We felt as if the symbols were watching us. Captain Rhea led with unwavering determination, though the tension in her shoulders betrayed her caution. As we proceeded between the towering pillars, our beams unveiled disturbing details in the carved reliefs, faces contorted in silent agony, twisted runes that seemed to shift when our lights flickered across them. With every step, the air grew more stifling, even though the temperature gauge indicated the same freezing chill. It was as though an invisible, malevolent presence pressed against our suits, and its intensity increased with our every breath. Behind the pillars, we found steps carved into black stone. They descended into a surprise canyon from which a colonnade emerged. Such precision in architecture implied a high level of craftsmanship, a once flourishing culture now erased from history. What remained felt like a mausoleum for a lost empire. Our hearts pounded, ambition and dread mingling in a painful dance. Jason's voice quavered as he knelt to examine the steps. "This stone is older than anything I've ever seen," he murmured. "No known civilization should date this far back. Not here, at least." We felt compelled to press on. Excitement overshadowed the warning hum in our minds. Oddly, the deeper we ventured, the darker it became, as if our lights themselves waned. Our flashlights began to sputter intermittently. Sahan gritted his teeth, fiddling with the wires in the battery pack, checking them over and over, but found nothing wrong. The darkness here wasn't simply an absence of light, rather. It was an entity pressing back against illumination, straining to eclipse every beam. At last, we came upon a large courtyard embedded within the canyon. Dominating the center stood a massive doorway, an arch, inscribed with swirling runes that curved and spiraled like serpents. Each symbol seemed to glow faintly whenever our lights approached, but only for a moment, as if drawing energy from the illumination before fading once more into the gloom. Marina's eyes were bright with curiosity. We removed our gloves to press our bare hands against the stone. Beneath our touch, the ancient door vibrated with a quiet hum. With a deep groan, the gate began to open. Whether of its own accord or our prodding was unclear. It revealed a vast sanctuary within, a cavernous chamber lined with enormous pillars. The air inside was stagnant and suffocating, faintly scented with something akin to sweet rot. Intricate mosaics covering the floor formed optical illusions, shapes that appeared to move out of the corner of one's eye. Jacquin placed a foot on the mosaic and pulled back as though it burned him. Captain Rhea pushed forward, leading us deeper inside, her flashlight beam dancing across the pillars to reveal ghostly carvings of robed figures, their heads thrown back in what seemed like a rapturous chant. We spread out cautiously. Like an ocean tide, the darkness ebbed and flowed between the pillars, forming a haze in the corners of the temple. At times, we could nearly glimpse silhouettes shifting from column to column, but whenever we tried to fix our gazes on them, the shapes vanished. Against her own better judgment, Mirena advanced toward an unlit alcove in the far wall. I remember her hand trembling on her flashlight. As she shone the beam in, dust motes swirled in the sudden light. Within the alcove lay an enormous orb, carved from perfect obsidian, floating above a set of stone hands that rose from a dais. A mesmerizing pattern of veins glowed in swirling patterns across its surface. A tapestry of cosmic star fields compressed into that black sphere. Mirena whispered into the comms, "It's alive!" Though she could not explain what she meant, some primal knowledge told her that we stood before an interface or an anchor, a fragment of some ancient intelligence. Captain Rhea slowly approached, placing her own hand on the sphere's surface, and the swirling patterns exploded with light. The effect was blinding, the illumination rushing across the walls and pillars in a wave, revealing every terrifying detail etched in the stone. In that flash, I saw monstrous forms looming high on the walls, winged creatures with unearthly eyes, rivulets of darkness leaking from their gaping mouths. The light crashed like a thunderbolt, and just as quickly, it snuffed out. Darkness returned, deeper than ever. Then came a low rumble, resonating through the temple floor. The obsidian orb cracked, leaving a jagged fracture across its once perfect shell. A steady pulse emanated from within its core, ba-bump, echoing like a colossal heartbeat. The swirling gloom in the corners of the temple swelled forward, shifting with a new purpose. Shadows coalesced, merging into a single roiling mass. It oozed along the walls, devouring the scant beams of light radiating from our suits. We felt a raw, crushing presence in our minds, the chamber filled with an unearthly shriek-a-chorus of overlapping voices. Our attempt to run was met by swirling streams of living darkness. They licked at our limbs, draining the power from our flashlights, ice creeping along our arms. Jacquin screamed, and I saw something seize him from behind, though there was nothing tangible to grab him. His visor cracked under a black weight, a hideous force pressing in. Jacquin yanked Jacquin away, and we retreated to the corridor in a desperate scramble. Candles, tucked away in a corner, flared to life, spontaneously flickering, blue flames dancing as though invisible hands lit them. That faint light offered a moment's reprieve, forcing the encroaching darkness to shrink. We huddled in the corridor, panicked, watching the black shape swirl just beyond the ring of candlelight. Whatever we had awakened, it was not satisfied with mere intimidation. Captain Rhea's voice came through the comms, subdued and tense. "We need to get out." Yet the temple door behind us had slammed shut, sealed by the same malevolent will now stirring behind these walls. Mirena, face pale, pointed toward a staircase descending deeper into the temple. "That might be our only way," she said, voice shaking. We could not fathom why going deeper would lead us out, but with the entrance blocked, we had no choice. Step by step we descended, the flickering flames lighting our way as the darkness pursued us. Each footfall echoed on thick stone as the corridor narrowed, engraved with disturbing scenes. Robed worshippers kneeling before swirling voids, towers swallowed by monstrous shadows. Everywhere the theme repeated, the devourer of light, claiming worlds lost to the endless black. Halfway down, Jacquin collapsed. He pressed shaking hands to his temples. "It's inside my head," he groaned. Blood trickled from his nose, and his pupils dilated in terror. Sahan knelt beside him, but Jason sprang up with a start, flailing wildly, eyes glazed with a new madness. "We should never have come," he shrieked, voice cracking. "We are food for it, do you understand? This is how it opens a path to the rest of the universe." His outburst triggered a ripple in the darkness, a slow surge that lasked at the edges of our candlelight. It was as if the entity basked in his anguish. We pressed on, half dragging Jacques, until we reached a new chamber. Here, dim phosphorescent crystals embedded in the walls provided strips of pale green radiance. Against this weak glow, we saw the labyrinthine architecture of a subterranean hall. Columns stretched upward until swallowed by blackness, and the floor was strewn with bones, piles of skeletal remains that crunched under our boots in haunting echoes. Marina stepped closer to one of the piles, grimacing at the profusion of fractured skulls. "Not human," she whispered. The elongated craniums and strange jaw structures belonged to some unknown species, perhaps ancient inhabitants, or earlier explorers who had stumbled upon this nightmare. We made our way further in, each of us feeling the unstoppable gloom slithering behind like a hidden serpent. The crystal's light flickered irritably, as though the darkness was trying to consume that too. At the far end of the hall, we found a symbol carved into the floor, a twin spiral twisting inward, forming a pit-like design. The center of the spirals opened to a wedge, descending into thick black. We sensed something below us, pulsing, resonating with the same monstrous heartbeat that had once echoed from the orb. Instinct screamed that venturing downward was madness, yet some deeper compulsion drove us onward. Perhaps we hoped to find a way to seal the darkness at its source. Sahan proposed a risky plan: to overload one of our portable reactors in the heart of the temple and destroy whatever lurked within. The rest of us were cautious, wary that a reactor explosion could collapse the structure on us. But as we weighed our options, trapped with no visible exit, the plan seemed worth attempting. If the temple caved in, perhaps it would bury this horror with it. Captain Rhea nodded grimly. "We can't let that thing escape into the galaxy," she said. "It's better this way." Carefully, Sahan set about rigging the device. While he worked, the rest of us fanned out to keep watch. The gloom in the corridor flickered in impatient pulses. A wave of nausea struck me, and I felt as though something tugged at my consciousness, scrambling my sense of time. In my peripheral vision, I saw dancing lights form faces, twisted visages, with black tears trailing down hollow cheeks. Yet whenever I turned, they were gone. Marina prayed in a language none of us recognized. Moments stretched into eternity, until Sahan finally called out, "We're set. We have 10 minutes. He shouldered the improvised bomb, glancing warily at the swirling black mass creeping down the corridor. Captain Rhea took point with calm authority. We'd plant the device as close to the entity's core as possible, and so we descended again, deeper still, into a vile labyrinth of twisting shrines. The architecture was obscene to our eyes, the geometry distorting even the limited glow of our helmets. At times, gravity itself seemed to warble beneath our feet, as if the laws of physics were being bent. Finally, we reached what appeared to be the heart of the temple. The corridor opened into a circular chamber, ringed by statues, towering monoliths of nightmare creatures, their outstretched arms cradling orbs that flickered with faint purple luminescence. In the center of this chamber lay a gaping pit. From inside its depths emanated that slow, methodical beating. Each pulse thrummed in our chests, synchronized to our heartbeats. Ken let out a faint whimper and sank to the floor, alternately sobbing and laughing. The darkness curled around the ceiling, oozing downward like black tar. Within this fluid shadow we caught glimpses of something colossal moving behind the veil, a shape with massive barbed wings and an elongated face etched with starless eyes. Its presence was suffocating, and though we could only see it in flickers, its psychic weight pressed on us relentlessly. We rushed to place the reactor device in the center of the room, but a tendril of darkness lashed out, knocking Sahan off his feet. Captain Rhea lunged in to help him, straining against the inky coil that tightened around his chest. Desperate, Marina thrust one of the flickering torches we had salvaged at the tendril, making it retreat momentarily. Relentless, though, the darkness reformed, launching another assault, this time aiming for the reactor. It wanted to prevent us from finalizing our plan. In the swirling melee, Captain Rhea screamed, Awoke, do it now! I frantically activated the timer sequence, ignoring the gloom creeping up my legs. It felt like icy hands dragging me into a bottomless pit. We had mere seconds. Somehow the plan remained intact: prime the reactor and run. Yet the entity had other intentions. Whispers or illusions pressed in on our minds, promising power, immortality, anything if we simply let the darkness out. I felt my resolve falter as the black crowned my waist. A haunting voice reverberated. "Release me," it hissed in a multitude of languages. My fear soared until Captain Rhea seized my shoulder and yanked me free. "Go!" she barked, propelling me toward a side passage. We stumbled away, leaving Sahan to guard the reactor. He insisted on finishing the final calibrations, ensuring the device could not be disarmed by the creature. Despite our shouts urging him to join us, he remained behind. The last sight I had of him was his silhouette tangled in tendrils of darkness, forcing his trembling fingers to keep the reactor's timing locked down. Then we cleared the threshold of the corridor, and the monstrous pit vanished from view. A thunderous rumble shook the temple. We staggered, dust raining from the ceiling as massive stones cracked. The floor seemed to tilt. Jason lost his footing and slid across a chunk of rubble, screaming as fissures opened beneath him. Captain Rhea snatched his wrist at the last second, and together we hauled him to firmer ground. But the darkness was again at our heels, swirling in from cracks in the walls, hungry to consume. Doors slammed shut one after another behind us, as though an unseen intelligence sought to trap us within this labyrinth forever. "Faster!" Captain Rhea urged. A flash of violent light erupted deeper within the temple. Sahan had triggered the device. The force of the explosion cracked the walls, rolling shockwaves across the corridor. A wave of blistering heat and swirling debris shot forward, scorching the gloom. We threw ourselves to the ground, arms over our heads. For a moment, everything was a churning maelstrom of fire and shadow. When the roar subsided, we lifted our heads. Boulders and broken pillars blocked much of the path behind us, where black smoke curled upward. The oppressive psychic aura had thinned, leaving us gasping in that temporary reprieve. But a faint echo of the heartbeat still pulsed, weaker now, yet maddeningly present, like a wounded beast that refused to die. We realized with despair that the temple wasn't fully destroyed. The monstrous entity remained, albeit wounded. With renewed urgency, we pressed on. The corridors took us upward, twisting at impossible angles. Occasionally, cosmic illusions flickered on the walls, starfields drenched in blood-red light, galaxies torn open by black voids, entire planets swallowed in an instant. It was a cosmic nightmare manifested in these cyclopean halls. Jason kept muttering to himself, occasionally bursting into fits of laughter that echoed eerily in our comms. Captain Rhea refused to leave him behind, determined that we all escape or die together. At last, we burst into a chamber that seemed vaguely familiar. It was the same sanctuary with the wide pillars and mosaic floors where we had first awakened the orb. Yet the once intact stone door at the temple's entrance now lay fractured. A silver streak of faint light glowed at the threshold, like a beacon in a moonless sky. Our hearts surged with hope that maybe, just maybe, we could still survive. Marina and I rushed toward the opening. Behind us, the darkness hissed and howled, forming writhing spines that jabbed at our backs. Captain Rhea lunged forward, pulling Jason along as we slipped through the shattered frame. We collapsed onto the airless courtyard beyond, our lungs straining in the chilly planetary atmosphere and the weight of our suits. The clouds overhead swirled in disorienting patterns, as if the very sky was unraveled. Night still gripped the planet's surface, but it felt merciful compared to the temple's malevolence. For an instant, in the faint starlight, we gazed upon the battered structure. Through the cracks we saw the darkness raging, roiling like a black ocean, battered by residual energies from Sahan's sacrifice. But it was not dissipating. Instead, it began leaking out in twisted wisps, tasting the open air. We scrambled across the plain, which had become a shifting field of dust. Our shuttle was still visible in the distance, a small shape resting on the bleak horizon. Captain Rhea led the charge, pushing us to our limits, all the while scanning the skies to ensure no sign of the darkness above. Jaqen stumbled again, but this time he rose on his own, muttering that the planet was cursed. None of us disagreed. When we arrived at the shuttle, the door opened reluctantly. The interior lights flickered in protest, as though the entity's draining effect had extended beyond the temple. Marina, suppressing her trembling, fired up the engines. Captain Rhea and I scrambled to assist, verifying navigation systems and frantically checking for damage to the hull. Meanwhile, Jaqen sat in a seat, head in his hands, likely battling echoes of the psychic presence. The engines whined to life with a halting start, then stabilized. We took one last look at the temple from the shuttle's viewport, a silent silhouette crowned by swirling shadows, luminous strands of malevolent black forming a thin column stretching upward. The entity was no longer confined. Though wounded, it had tasted the air. Mirena slammed a fist onto the console, eyes moist with regret. "We didn't kill it," she said. "It's free now." With a roar, the shuttle lifted off, dust swirling around us. Climbing in altitude, we observed the twisted ruins of the temple receding below, the swirling darkness coiling in the sky. A tremor of dread grew stronger as we gained distance, an inkling that the darkness, in time, would seek out the brightest stars, the warmest worlds, devouring hope wherever it touched. Our mission had ignited an ancient malevolence. It was awake, and it hungered. We left that cursed planet behind, yet a shadow traveled with us. Each day on the return journey, we felt a chill in the ship's corridors. Lights flickered in contorted patterns. We swore we glimpsed movement in the corners of our vision. The cosmic heartbeat reverberated faintly within our dreams, an unending reminder that the entity existed beyond spatial boundaries, an eternal nightmare now loosed upon the universe. In the nights that followed, we huddled together, haunted by the knowledge of what we had unleashed. Sleep offered no respite. I recorded every symptom, every dream, every suspicion of creeping darkness. My hands trembled whenever I wrote about Sahon's sacrifice or about Captain Rhea's stoic determination. Perhaps these records will serve as a warning, a fragile testament left behind by those who dared trespass in the domains of cosmic foe. We can only hope that somewhere, somehow, there might be a force capable of containing this shadow before it consumes all light. For though we escaped with our lives, we cannot escape the guilt, nor the belief that something follows us, devouring all radiance in its path. Even now, in the claustrophobic metal confines of our vessel, black spots writhe at the edge of our periphery. A subtle whisper resonates through the halls, too soft to fully hear, yet impossible to dismiss. And beyond the sealed windows, the stars glimmer with diminishing brightness, as though trembling at its approach.